Also new tonight in The Current, we're talking turtles. Have you ever heard of the Blandings turtle? They are one of 7 turtle species in Illinois that are endangered or threatened, and they're native to our area. But they are extremely elusive and shy. What you're looking at right now are some of the Blandings turtles the team out at Nahant Marsh in Davenport have been tracking since 2010. As of last spring, we had them right here on The Current with us, they knew of 26 Blandings turtles at Nahant. But some local biologists say the little turtles also live in the Milan Bottoms wetland area, which is about 500 acres owned by the city of Rock Island. The thing is, though, we don't really know. The Milan Bottoms are muddy, they're swampy, and they're hard to get through. And it's also right beside new construction. Rock Island has greenlit the development of a truck stop, dispensary, and gas station next to the Bottoms. And in response to environmental concerns, the city has also agreed to spend $233,000 on a new partnership with Augustana so the land and its animal species can be studied and cataloged over the next 5 years. But they're not the only researchers interested in the Milan Bottoms wetlands. Elizabeth VanCamp is a local environmentalist and master's student, and she says that biologists have seen Blandings turtles out in the bottoms. So she has spent months working with some new technology to prove it, and she joins us right now here in The Current. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's very fitting because Saturday is World Turtle Day.
I know, isn't that a great timing?
It worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, tell us about, I know you haven't seen the Blandings out there yourself, but what have you heard about them being out in the bottoms?
Well, we've seen, local biologists have seen them basking. They are incredibly elusive. I've worked with the ones at Nahant. I've helped with tracking them. They don't want to be found. If they see you even approaching them, they disappear from sight. And so that is the tricky part of it, right? Is that they are a protective species. We've seen them out there. We know they need our protection, but we have to prove it. So that is what I'm out there trying to do.
And part of proving it involves this relatively new technology, eDNA testing. Walk us through how this works.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it stands for environmental DNA, and any animal in their environment sheds DNA constantly. So for these Blandings turtles, it could be their scutes, their scales that shed regularly, their mouths when they open to feed or anything like that. They have saliva come out, they poop and they pee. All of those things contain DNA, and it stays in the water for a short period of time, and so we can collect water samples and then do a bunch of lab processing, and that breaks it down to just the DNA that's in the sample. And so then we can compare it to known Blandings DNA samples that we have and determine the DNA that we have from the water does it contain any Blandings DNA or not.
Now, I want to be clear, when you say this DNA is in the water for a short period of time, it really is a really short period of time that they're there. So you have to be really careful with the type of testing that you do.
Absolutely. So in the water, undisturbed, where the sun can't reach it a lot, it could stay for 2 to 4 weeks, hypothetically. Once I've collected my samples, I have to get it to the lab within 24 hours. Otherwise, DNA starts to break down, and we don't want that.
And also, the water samples that you're looking at, it can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go walk out in the Milan Bottoms and any of the water could have the DNA.
No, absolutely. So we want to look where the Blandings, where we know they probably are. So in the really mucky areas, the areas you were talking about that are really difficult to navigate, that's where they like to be. They like to hide in the muck and in the dirt. They like to hide in plant roots. They like to be where there's lots of logs down that they can hide. And so when I'm out there, I'm really kind of trudging through it sometimes. And then other times I go out on a boat and we try to not disturb the sediment, but get out there into the little islands that are in the bottoms as well and sample from around those edges, because again, we want to get the best sample we can where there will be, hopefully, Blandings DNA.
Well, let's talk about that, because you've been out there several times so far. I'm thinking last fall, this spring so far. You have another trip planned this summer.
Yes.
You're working with the team at the University of Illinois to test what you get from the water samples. What have you found so far?
So the fall sampling really was my first it was my first foray at it. I had to learn how to do it. I didn't get any positive detections from that. We weren't necessarily expecting it. The turtles had already gone into brumation, which is kind of where they go to sleep essentially for the winter. So we weren't surprised by that. And then I went out again in April. And just because there's a lot of moving parts, I work with the University of Illinois as well as the landowner out there, Tim Presley, who is so kind and lets me go out onto his property to sample. And then my busy schedule as well. So we went out in April just because that's when it worked, but there was floodwaters there. So again, with DNA, not only do we not want it to degrade, but we don't want it to be too diluted, because if it's too diluted, we can't detect it. So we tested it and we got an inconclusive result, which means that we can't necessarily say we didn't see DNA, but we can't say that we didn't. So I'm going to go out again in a couple more weeks when conditions are perfectly ideal for Blandings activity, and we're going to sample again, and we're going to see what we can find.
It takes a lot of time, money, and effort to do research like this. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's really not as simple as going out and getting a scoop of water and going to the lab.
Yeah, I wish.
There's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah.
So why are you so passionate about proving there are blandings out there?
Well, I have cared about animals since I was really little. I've cared about the environment for a long time, and I know that that's not the priority for everyone, to protect the environment or to consider how us as humans are impacting animals and the nature around us. But the Milan Bottoms is really important to me because the whole community has really come out and said, we don't want this development project there. And I don't really want to see the development project there for lots of reasons. And a major one is the water quality impacts that could happen. Wetlands like Nahant Marsh and the Milan Bottoms, they do a lot of water filtration for us. That's really important for us as humans, but it's also really important for species like blandings. And my focus in my career is conservation and making sure that we take as good a care of this earth and the species that we share it with. And so when I found out that there's blandings out there, one sighting was enough to motivate me to get out there and to see. Because if we can find them, if we can find their DNA, we can put protections in place so that even if this development project goes all the way through, there will have to be protections for those vulnerable creatures who live out there.
You know, Elizabeth, someone might say, you know, Augustana is doing this 5-year study. The development has done their own study. Why do we need a third one? What's your response to that?
It's a really good question. The developer did source and pay for a study that never visited the site. They never went out there. So in science, you can't just say an opinion is fact. You can say you don't think blandings are out there, but if you never went out there and looked, if you never collected DNA samples and found out for sure that they're not there, how can we truly say that there aren't species out there that are worth protecting? And so eDNA is this really cool thing. It's not just that it's new and that it can really give us these definitive answers. It's that it's working. It's been demonstrated in several labs across the country. It's working for elusive species like blandings, who we have a hard time finding. And so I think that's why it's really important to me to get out there and do that, is because the Augustana study, that's amazing, and I'm so glad they're doing that. To my knowledge, they're not going to be using too much eDNA. And so again, this is our opportunity to take this really cool technology that we have access through the University of Illinois for, and I'm working with an expert in eDNA, specifically who's worked with blandings. Why not take that and apply it to this and just see what we can find out? And I'm all for putting my head together with the Augustana researchers too and working together. So.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with in June when you go out there, because hopefully there won't be any floodwaters at that time.
Hopefully we can get out there in ideal conditions and no brumation. It'll just be great.
You know, a needle in a haystack. Try finding a tiny turtle in 500 acres.
Exactly. And they can, and I have tracked them before, and you know, I was on top of them sometimes with a monitor that's saying it's right here. It would still take me an hour to find them. They are just so good at hiding, and I appreciate that about them, but I'd love to be able to find some of their DNA.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, you put in months of work into this, and we are so excited to see what comes from the rest of your research out at the Milan Bottoms. Thank you for stopping by today.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody's wanting to follow along, I have a GoFundMe that has all the information about the research I'm doing in the Quad Cities, and I also have a TikTok that I post all my updates on if people are curious.
Absolutely. And we made it easy for you guys, because if you want to check out Elizabeth's GoFundMe, you can find that up at WQAD.com underneath the As Seen on TV tab at the top of the homepage.